sunflower, a little funny. If I were a rose, maybe you'd want me. If I could change overnight, I'd turn into something you like. But I'm a sunflower, a little funny. If I were her, maybe you'd want me. But I know you don't have a clue. The sunflower's waiting for you, waiting for you. But I'm a sunflower, little funny. If I were her, maybe you'd pick me. And I know you don't have a clue. The sunflower's waiting for you, waiting for you.
Welcome to Counterspin, 10th of May 2021. Joining me in the studio in Central Command is Carlene Hereora. Interesting name, she'll give a bit about their background. She's also a staunch advocate for children, which is the theme of this show, and has links to this current inquiry that's going on into state care abuse, which is probably the third plus. And still I don't see the high-profile people getting hauled out of their homes and put in jail. Let's hope this actually turns up something now that they've got a wider scope of inquiry to look into all aspects of this, including powers to uplift any rock. Because I believe there will be a lot of little cretins hanging out under those rocks and in positions of power. She is also, like Paul Zentfeld in our last show, looking closely at and will no doubt take part in this inquiry. So without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to set up this next part when we come back with her with a video from Tom Ballard and the Underground Railroad show, Sounds of Freedom. Check it out.
I don't think I can do this job, Tim. As soon as I lay down, all I see are those kids' faces. How long you been doing this? 12 years. How do you do it?
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade.
Señor Timoteo, tú rescatas niños, ¿verdad? Quizá puedas ayudarme a encontrar a mi hermana.
Imagine walking into a room right now, seeing an empty bed. But what we do.
Shivering stars drift around in the sky.
We're Homeland Security. You know we can't go off rescuing kids in Colombia.
I like
This job tears you to pieces. This is my one chance to put those pieces back together.
We're talking about extracting an 11-year-old girl from an army of rebels.
Not just her. I'm talking about rescuing hundreds of kids.
She could be a block down the road, or she could be in Moscow, Bangkok, LA.
Over 2 million children a year are being sucked into the deepest recesses of hell. If we do nothing, someday it's gonna reach the likes of you. What if this was your daughter?
Wherever I go, I find my way home.
Welcome back to Counterspin. Carlene Hereora is joining me in the studio. That you just saw, that's the real pandemic. Forget all this other rubbish that they're putting over the media to distract you from a number of things. Carlene, let's just delve right into it. What drove you to do this? What drives you?
First, guys, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you, brother, for creating this platform for us. It's very easy. The beginning of last year, my partner and I took in a family of 6. within a month of having them in our home, we come to the realisation that something was not right within the family, and a whole lot of due diligence and evidence gathering pretty much led to the uncovering of what I thought was probably the first ever international child sex trafficking ring right here in good old Aotearoa.
Wow.
5 men arrested, 1 girl rescued, and 1 girl saved from actually being sexually exploited, but she was raped, and we are still currently going through court for that trial. 1 more man to try and actually lock away, because the first 4, at the hands of this judiciary system that we have here in New Zealand, found that the first 4 men who raped this 15-year-old had enough going for them and pretty much set them free back out into our community. And watching that all play out, I knew that I needed to do something about that, and bringing awareness to the wider public of New Zealand to let them know that these atrocities are happening in our own country, right on our own back door. And the flooding of stories that have come out from us exposing our own story and helping with this trafficking ring, it's not the only time it's happened, and it's bigger than anything I could have ever imagined myself being involved in.
And I think the general public are getting sick to death of watching these predators getting away with limp-wristed, wet bus ticket, fines, sentences. It's almost like the judiciary and those around it are looking after their own.
That is the only thing that we can kind of break it all down to, is the system has been designed by our bureaucrats, our politicians, our judiciary, our police, our lawyers, our journalists even, our family welfare, our child welfare systems, to look after themselves and not protect us, the people, but mainly our children. It's been a horrible journey in the way of uncovering the depth of pedophilia, incest, child sex trafficking, child abuse within our state care, our faith-based care. I never thought this was the country that I lived in. I'd always thought this stuff was only in the movies. It was only happening in other countries around the world. Not for a second did I think at any point was I living in a country that was tainted with some of the most horrific crimes that I've ever encountered, really.
Yeah, we sort of get the position in New Zealand where, well, people take the position in New Zealand where unless it directly affects them,
That's
no
right.
one gets off their rear end to do anything about it. But they're quite happy to be armchair critics and try to tear down and rip apart those who are standing up. Like you got the Stand in the Park people, for a start, trying to bring light to things. You've got Christchurch Patriots. You've got all these other people trying to protect others. They don't have to do this. They do it out of the goodness of their own heart to try and bring awareness. But like most, this is one thing, because I remember statistics quite a while back that they said 1 in every 4 in this country have in some way been affected by abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's only reported. I would say that's more
right.
like 1 in every 2. And I bet every single person watching this show, and those who will tune in soon because we're becoming the dominant platform for truth, they will all be touched by a story like this.
I hope so. That's why I'm here. Any chance I get to go on any platform or stand in any protest or join any patriot or freedom fighter to put this story out to the public, I'm going to take that opportunity. And you hit on a point earlier that unless it directly affects you, you're not bothered. You're not going to do anything about it. And I was one of those people. I was living large, taking charge, enjoying my own life. And then, boom, we got hit with this whole child trafficking scandal. And watching it all play out, no one was doing anything. And I was like, okay, maybe I have to do something. Maybe this is what I was born to do. This is my purpose. Because it happened just like that.
That sort of lends itself to the Hereora part of your name, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Explain that part, because that's actually a...
Yeah, so Hereora means bound to survive. Way back, generations ago, my previous family name, there was a curse on our family, and all the firstborn boys were dying off. So it got to one generation and the family got sick of it. So what they done was they took the firstborn of the latest generation, they made a rope out of flax, so a harakeke rope, tied his penis, put the rope through the middle of his legs, and then bound his hands behind his back and drowned him in order to kill the curse off that was affecting our family. And then from that came the birth of my current family name, which is Hereora. And honestly, throughout this journey, going through child abuse, child sex trafficking, child sexual exploitation, and then becoming aware of satanic ritual abuse, it kind of dawned on me that it was already set up for me to kind of end up on this journey, because it's who I come from, really.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't think people actually realise the scale of this.
Nope.
I mean, it's been said, and it's pretty hard to argue against, that New Zealand is a pedophile ring masquerading as a country. And a lot of people in positions of power are protecting these cretins. In fact, I believe there's 4 particular serving MPs that have name suppression for these types of things, and they're still there now. So I wonder what portfolios they've got and what they're in charge of.
Oh, you're right there, because in our own case, right, the first man that was arrested, his name was Marcus Barker, 55 years old, had his own carpeting business in Kaitaia. The crimes that he committed against this girl, because there was video evidence, which was uploaded onto porn sites, and people were able to subscribe and download the video of this 15-year-old being raped by this man.
Sick pricks.
The original charges actually landed him with a sentence of 10 years. But because he chose to testify against the main perpetrator, who was the one who organised all of this, the ringleader, they reduced his sentence to 3 years. And then what happened was, one of our sitting MPs, who is well known in Kaitaia, and he was a former principal in Kaitaia, actually wrote him a character reference. Wow. And that character reference helped Marcus Barker's sentence to be further reduced to 1 year home detention and $1,000 fine.
Which he could probably still access the net and get himself off looking at child porn.
Right. And when we blew the story on this, a former neighbour of his had reached out to us to inform us that they had already laid complaints about Marcus Barker being a peeping Tom, spying on both neighbours, at the time 12 and 13-year-old daughters. They were both reported to the police. This man decided to run the mother off the road, which they have given affidavits for, and also pulled a gun on the father. But the police didn't do anything about any of this, and then he was allowed to remain in the community, and then he became a pedophile and a child sexual exploiter, but he's still allowed to be in his community. He's still got his business. There's no real punishment for him. I mean, home detention, there's all different forms of home detention. You can have 24/7 lockdown. You can get locked down from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But because he has a business, he's pretty much got free reign to still be out in the community. Exactly. And that's been helped by a sitting MP who is number 3 on Labour, and I think he has 3 portfolios that are very, very important, and one of them actually has to do with what we're talking about today.
Do you remember Graham Cagle, I think it was, who was a Christian, some Christian party, who was also a police prosecutor? He used to stand up and go on about how, you know, children should be safe and all that sort of stuff. He got convicted, of course, of child abuse. And then I think the stepfather or the father of one of the children gave him a hiding outside the courtroom. And then he got charged for it. I mean, people are trying, you know, people want to take matters into their own hands and wipe the floor with these cretins simply because nothing's ever done. And it's only the low-level hanging fruit that ever gets done to make it look like they're actually doing something. But this is huge. It's actually everywhere.
Yeah.
That's our pandemic.
And you're right about that. I mean, all the court cases that we went to when it came to sentencing, so we attended 3 of the sentencings, and the amount of strength it took me to not approach the judges and punch them in the face because I was so disappointed. There is video evidence of this 15-year-old girl unconscious because this man used drugs and alcohol to completely sedate her to a point where she had no idea what was happening. This is a real thing. These are videos that I've witnessed myself. And for that to not be enough, for these men to be lawfully prosecuted in a way that fits the crime that they committed, it's horrible because anyone who rapes a child, there should be a sentence of life in prison.
But they've just robbed a life, haven't they?
But because they've just robbed a life. But that is not what happened in this case. And that's only the first case. Yep. That was only the first sentencing. Then we had Michael Cornelius Waitenberg, 57 years old, from right here in Mairangi Bay in Auckland, who had his own ministry, small congregation out in Mairangi Bay. Also partook in the sexual exploitation of this girl. And not only did he do it once, he actually tried to book in to go a second round with her, which was announced in the courtroom. And all he got was 6 months home detention, and he offered to pay the victim reparation, which I'm not too sure of the amount, so I can't actually state what that was.
So it makes you wonder what's going through the judge's head. Maybe
Speaking of the judges, well, in all these cases, right, if you've got 1 victim and 5 perpetrators, I would think that you would only have 1 judge residing over the whole case. We're about to have our 5th judge.
Wow.
We've had a different judge every sentencing, and they ain't even the same judges who heard the preliminary hearing. And now we're going to High Court on June the 15th to try and put away the ringleader, and we've got a completely different judge again.
So he's basically the only one who's actually been held.
Yep.
And probably have it all landed down on him, or maybe not.
Yeah, well, the day Michael Waitenberg got sentenced, Owen James Sigley, 66 years old, from my hometown, Kawakawa, and I attended school with both his daughters, so I know him very well. And that was horrible to find out because I knew with us exposing the story, his daughters were going to find out.
Yes, the innocent ones.
So there was about a 30-second time slot where I thought, wow, do I really want to hurt these girls? And I was like, but this is
But you're saving a lot more.
Saving a lot more. I had to do it. And his oldest daughter actually attended the court case. Now, both these men bawled their eyes out in court in front of that judge. As soon as their sentence was handed down, Mr. Sigley only received 9 months home detention and a $1,000 fine for raping a 15-year-old girl, where there is video evidence of that. Ended up out in the foyer of the courthouse, laughing, happy as, no tears, nothing, absolutely no remorse.
Good showmanship, eh?
Great showmanship. And it worked because that was the outcome of that, was home detention. In there, he stated that he's had to sell his business, he's had to sell his home and move from Kawakawa because the wider community were very upset. It's a complete lie. He's still operating his radiating business in Kawakawa and he still has his home. They're still allowed to go free. And I understand that one of the reasons that Mr. Sigley was his sentence was reduced was because his family are one of the founding families of our town. And it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, a lot of these people, they once they get caught, all of a sudden they're sorry. Mm-hmm. They're not sorry for what they did. No. They're sorry that they got caught.
Absolutely.
And then it's every man for himself, like rats leaving a sinking ship.
Yeah.
So these people get light sentences because they're dumping on the other person that they were only too happy to rape a child with.
That's right. That's horrible.
You've also got some new information that's exclusive to Counterspin on the Glen Elg Health Camp. Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, so throughout this journey of becoming an advocate at the beginning for child sex trafficking, that's all I wanted to do was bring this awareness to the wider public. But what it done was it opened doors for victims of other crimes to reach out to me to share their story. After we blew our story, every day there was just story after story after story. And one of the stories that really touched my heart, this wonderful human being named Alan Ford, who is a resident of Christchurch, and he was also a former caretaker of a health camp called the Glen Elg Health Camp down in Christchurch in Hillsborough. And he sent me through a document, which we have here, which I've given to Counterspin exclusively to share as far and wide as they can, in regards to the sexual abuse of young girls in this health camp at the hands of a Dr. Diane Espy. Now, Dr. Diane Espy was performing what she was saying were hymen examinations to check these young girls to see if they had been sexually abused. And what she done was she reached out to a psychiatrist to help her commit perjury against the fathers of these girls and accuse them of molesting and raping their own daughters, which gave them the right to go in and uplift these girls from their homes, put them into this health camp where she could actually have their way with them. And in this case file, the testimonies from these girls are absolutely horrible. One girl named Violet, 12 days in a row, Dr. Espy performed these procedures on this girl and then coerced her, because she had no one there with her during these procedures, and coerced her into believing that her father had committed these crimes against her.
That's right.
Then she was uplifted, the father's arrested and questioned, and then he has to live with the stigma that he's a pedophile, or he's performed incest on his own daughter. And there's two other girls in this document. Two of these girls' fathers actually died before they got to clear their name.
Yeah. So that's why we hope we'll be able to do that now. Because it says here in one of the documents, it talks about Dr. Espy, and it says, Dr. Espy's indulgence in satanic, lesbian, pedophilic perversions with the girls. Dr. Espy's fabrications of allegations of sexual abuse against the fathers of each girl, like you just alluded to. Dr. Espy and the Department of Social Welfare's combined efforts to destroy the respective family units. And that is a key point. If you have a look at the legislation that has been going on over the last few decades, it's been moving to destroy the family, to completely wipe out the family unit. That makes children more vulnerable, makes children easier prey to be uplifted for spurious allegations, and then, of course, to traffic, to abuse, to do all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so the story was actually brought to the public back in 2004 and 2007, but the exclusive on this story that isn't in these records is that when these crimes were brought to light and her service to the Glen Elg Health Camp was ended, she actually took a job on the Dunedin DHB as the head of the children's department.
So despite knowing all of this, she still elevates to a bigger position.
Yep, she got moved off. The girls got silenced. She got a prominent position on the Dunedin DHB. And when one of the advocates for these girls found out, they actually got in contact with the head of the DHB department in Dunedin to make a complaint about Dr. SB's perversions,
sickness. It's just wrong.
Instead of doing anything about it, what they done was they actually ended her contract. There was no ramification for what she had done in the past. So she moved from the Dunedin DHB to the Canterbury DHB, where she took another position as the head of the children's department.
It's almost like priests who overindulge in kiddie fiddling, right? I call them K-fids.
Well, this is kiddie fiddling. One of the witnesses that we have from her time at the Dunedin DHB, she was actually using drugs and administering drugs to deem them not able to... Incapacitated, that's the word. And she's ready to tell her story. So we've got all these witnesses who have been waiting for something to come forward and help them get the justice that they've been searching for. These all happened in the 80s.
Yep.
And we're in 2021. So almost 35 years, these girls have been waiting. We've got 117 victims.
It's like the Lake Ellis people as well. They wait decades to get justice.
Right.
And from that point till now, imagine how many more that will have to wait 15, 20 years for all the cover-ups and the sweeping under the carpet and protect your mates.
It's... Honestly, I don't know how Alan has gone 30 years advocating for these girls. He's given up his whole life. He was the caretaker. Violet was the first girl who actually ran to his caretaker shed for help after the 12th day.
Wow. And
told him what had happened. So him and another friend had organised the way to get the girls out of the health camp. So they pretty much, in a sense, kidnapped the girls. But what they were doing was saving them. And he's still trying to save them. And he had come across a couple of my lives and thought, man, she's got some balls. Maybe she can help get the story back out there again.
And here it is.
And you can actually Google Dr. Diane Espy and you can find other articles on what happened in the Glenelg Health Camp. Just that no one cared enough at the time to give them a platform to really share their story. You know, everyone kept shutting them down. They done a quick exclusive on assignment back in 97, I think it was. It didn't go anywhere because this government find ways to distract us from what's really going on.
Look what's going on now.
Classic. So that's the story of the Glenelg Health Camp, and we actually have to go back to Christchurch because we have video evidence of these women at the time when it first happened. They were just children, of their testimony. We have video testimony of them from their teens, and we also have to go back to Christchurch to give them an opportunity to tell their story as grown women now. Some of them in their late 30s, some of them are in their early 40s, and they've been waiting for this moment to really share their story. 117 victims. And that's just from the Glenelg Health Camp. We're not talking about the ones through the Dunedin DHB,
hundreds
the
of
Canterbury
thousands that we'll end up
DHB.
with.
And another plug, we have been given information from the chairperson of the current Royal Commission that has stated she also had placement at the Roxburgh Health Camp after she was removed from the Canterbury DHB.
Well, we'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just go on a break. We're going to show a Herald clip, actually. And you just lead us into that, because then we'll discuss more on the Royal Commission and the financials around it and all that sort of thing.
So the clip you're going to see is by the New Zealand Herald, and it was to let the public know that there was a Royal Commission hearing into the abuse of children within our state care and our faith-based care.
Let's check it out.
Hi everyone, Will here with Focus Live, and I'm joined by David Fisher, our senior writer at nzherald.co.nz, because, David, the most comprehensive inquiry into abuse of children in state and faith care is underway.
That's right, Will. This is an inquiry that is looking into how state-based organisations, boys' homes, girls' homes, faith-based organisations, boarding schools, charities that were set up by churches that looked after kids, how they looked after more than 100,000 children from 1950 through to 1999, and if the circumstances warrant even beyond that. And it has already heard evidence that is strong enough, concerning enough for them to pass it on to police, for them to pass names to police to investigate over the abuse of children.
Not just people who've since died, basically, right? There are people alive now being investigated.
There are people alive today who will be very concerned about the information that the Commission is hearing, because it will name them.
Wow. Initially, this was just obviously an inquiry into state abuse that branched out into faith-based institutions as well, right?
In terms of the type of inquiry it is, it's probably the broadest in scope of any inquiry that's been held like this in comparable Western nations, and there have been quite a number in recent years. The job that they've got to get through is absolutely enormous, and they've only got 3.5 years to do it.
You've spoken to some of the victims, and there are numerous ones out there, I suppose. What are some of the stories that you've heard? So,
Lake Alice, the former psychiatric hospital, that's a scar in New Zealand's history, collective history. That was an institution that took in a lot of kids. It dealt with children that came from a lot of the boys' homes, girls' homes around the country, and even had cases of kids basically just being hooked off their parents and tossed into the psychiatric hospital, where they were subjected to horrendous sexual abuse and electrocution masquerading as therapy.
Wow, I understand also there's a bit in here about abuse against Māori, the higher proportions of them that were taken into custody, I suppose.
That's right, and I interviewed one of the commissioners, Anaru Irueti, and he has spoken about the state's attitude towards Māori during the time that these boys' homes and girls' homes are really booming, and a very paternalistic approach, because the state didn't seem to view the concept of whānau as being the same as the concept of family, and so it would overreach and it would take children that didn't need to be in care and put them in care. And the follow through from that now is the disproportionate number of Māori that are still in state care, if you like. They're in prison. It's a massively disproportionate number, and 80% of those prisoners were in state care when they were kids.
Right, let's take a look at a clip of that interview now.
The survivors I've met with so far, their experiences are very varied, from faith-based institutions to state-based institutions, and they are heart-rendering. They're really difficult to sit in and listen to, and for many of them, it might be the first time they've talked about their lived experience, and they want to speak to a commissioner. They want to speak with someone with authority and someone who they think might be able to make a difference. We've got over 1,000 survivors registered to come and participate in the private sessions, and we are hoping to see as many survivors as we can within our mandate over the next 3.5 years. We're all enormously respectful and grateful to survivors for coming forward and sharing their lived experience with us.
All right, Fisher, I'm just wondering, there are a lot of these other organisations, particularly faith-based organisations, coming to the table. How much power does this inquiry actually have? Because obviously, as we talked about before, years and years of institutionalised cover-up.
The Royal Commission operates under the New Inquiries Act, which is relatively new legislation. They've got enormous powers. I mean, they can turn. There's no rock big enough that they can't turn it over. All they need to know is where to look. So the next set of hearings, where it goes to next, is going to be looking at the faith-based institutions. That's going to be really interesting, because the Crown has pled pledged to lift secrecy, to lift waivers of confidentiality, to waive legal privilege. The faith-based institutions, they haven't all gone there yet. So we're going to see 2 weeks of hearings starting at the end of October, and those faith-based institutions are going to be the ones that the inquiry will be looking at then.
Is the feeling at the inquiry that this is going to unearth an enormous amount of stuff that hasn't been talked about, I guess, in, you know, decades and decades of New Zealand's history, a half century?
New Zealand is going to be shocked to its core. It really will be. Our history, it's a hidden history, is going to be exposed. The inquiry's got the powers to do that. Those organisations that turned up at the hearing, the faith-based and state-based, have pledged to give the inquiry every bit of assistance that they possibly can. If they stick with that, then stand by to be shocked.
And we will also stand by for your reporting. Thanks very much, David Fisher. Breaking news throughout the day at nzherald.co.nz. We'll be here, of course, on Facebook Live.
Welcome back to Counterspin with Carlene and Hereora. We're talking about child abuse, pedophiles, predators, and everything in between. And it's a sick subject, but it's something people need to know. This isn't a small thing. This isn't just happening in a back alley. This is happening in prominent places. These are rape parties. These are child abuse parties that these people do. They create these. They invite guests. It's sick. And I'm going to see what this Royal Commission of Inquiry is actually going to come up with, considering how many have we had? A couple already?
Yeah, I think this is like the third one.
And there's been like smaller scale ones.
We just finished the Waitangi Tribunal inquiry into Oranga Tamariki, which pretty much brought about something very similar to what the Royal Commission hearing is actually going through, which is in regards to the abuse of children in care.
Do you hold much, in all honesty, because we've had so many of these, and we know governments, police, I mean, not all cops are bad, just like, you know, in every organisation you have ones who really want to do something good. But unfortunately, like scum, that rises to the top of any organisation. So do you hold much hope that those good people can actually get the real elite of these organisations brought down?
Absolutely not.
Wow.
I have no faith in them whatsoever. It's gonna take the people coming together. It's like with everything we're fighting in the world right now, geoengineering, 5G, 1080. You can't beat people power. And that's one thing that we're lacking in our country. You watch all these protests around the world, like the one that was in London a couple of weeks ago, 1.2 million people standing up for our freedom. Imagine if 1.2 million of our people all gathered all at the same time. Yep. You can't stop that.
Excuse me for a minute. I'm just looking through my phone because I want to read an email, because we know that Freemasons, Freemasons are blamed for everything. The world's ills are blamed on Freemasons, and people are mentioning Freemason demolayers, which are actually between 12 and 21-year-old mentoring, because the demolay was the last Grandmaster 23rd was actually Jacques Demolay, or Demolay. It's actually the M-O-L-A-I, but it's also spelled M-O-L-A-Y. He was the 23rd and last Grandmaster for the Knights Templar when Pope Clement V ordered them disbanded, I think 1312, and then he hunted them down like dogs because the Pope actually owed them money. They were the elite fighting force that protected Christianity, and in order to become a Knights Templar, you have to be Christian.
Right.
So it just doesn't fly. It's illogical. You can't say everything's run by them, considering it's only a Christian order. You know what I mean? So because I am, and I've made no secret of it, I am a Freemason. And I'm sick to death of getting tarred with the same brush constantly. Yeah. You know, in fact, I wrote an email to the New Zealand Grand Master, actually, Graham Wrigley. He's down in Wellington, over my concerns. And I want to read that, actually, and I will just get you to check the date that it was sent.
January 15th?
January 15th, even before the show. So it wasn't like it was a setup. I did it yesterday. So here we go. Now, this is, we get mass emails out of things that are coming down the line, road shows, all that sort of stuff. So I said, dear Hobnog, thank you for your email. I realise it was sent to me in batch form, but appreciate the contact nonetheless. I have for some time been trying to illustrate what I believe to be the key factors in the decline of Freemasonry in New Zealand and indeed the world over. Unfortunately, such attempts have fallen on deaf ears. With this email, I hope it will find an engaging ear. Or, as this is indeed an email, an eye. I thought I'd add a funny there, see? The world, as we are aware, is awakening to the information previously unknown to all but insiders and those with the ability to decode the signs. Unfortunately, when humans are exposed to mass data dumps of information, they often are unable to process the sheer volume of that information, and as a consequence, their minds become overwhelmed. That's why you've got people running around like chickens with their head cut off with all sorts of different things. Like it or not, Freemasons are blamed for much of the societal ills people face. It is believed that we are evil men that are not only pedophiles and Satanists that harvest adrenochrome from trafficked children, but that we are the very people that caused the enslavement of mankind. It's actually quite the contrary, quite the opposite, but anyway. This is the perception. Now we could easily dismiss such notions as if it were not for the fact that a substantial number of people feel this way. Most good men are poisoned against the craft even before they have the opportunity to make inquiries. There are other issues. Take, for example, the glossy Freemason magazine publication. It always filled with the same type of Mason. Rarely do you see us lowly types adorning those pages. In fact, discussions with brothers has brought forward some interesting commentary of the craft. 1. The Brotherhood you pay money to be a part of, and it's a voluntary organisation that you can actually leave voluntarily as well. So these people you see on YouTube who say, I escaped the craft. Bullshit. Anyway, moving right along. Without mention of the rank and file contributors. 2. Freemasons need to stand up and be counted and even go public with a willingness to purge those that defile the craft with their unbecoming deeds. Remember, we're in an information war, and quite frankly, we are losing. 3. What good is an organisation comprising of highly intelligent and influential people if it is not utilised for the good of humanity? After all, charity is not about just giving funds and undertaking projects. Charity should also provide the protection of rights and freedoms. 4. The best of Freemasonry is seldom on display or talked about, and we must rid the craft of the notion that it's just another arm of the old boys network. Because there is an old boys network that exists, and it doesn't always involve Freemasons. In fact, some of your pedophiles are that type of old boys network. You need a number of Masons to front the reclamation of the craft's integrity and be more forthcoming about what it actually stands for. No one is buying into the slogans and glossy exterior. Another point. Seek out and rid the craft of the infiltrators, just as you would an intelligence agency, a police force, or a society of men where the threat to its harmony is real. As you can see, brothers chat. Of course, not many are willing to bring such attention to a man as significant as yourself, but I'm not one of those to sit idly by and watch a fraternity I'm part of being ripped to pieces because of the inability of our officers to get ahead of the destruction. I have often advocated publicly for Freemasonry and have steadfastly taken all of the attacks. I do this because I believe in what the craft stands for, and more importantly, what it could be. A true service to humanity and not seen as to be the demise or enslavement of it. I appreciate your time and thank you for your consideration. Blah, 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 blah. And of course, I got back from the secretary. Dwayne is good, man. Got your email, brother. I've let him know. He understands some of your comments made, and whilst not in agreement with them all, his focus is very much directed at the feedback that he's received from numerous brethren, and they're about to roll out their roadshow. Well, that's pretty lame.
Yeah, that's pretty lame.
But I just wanted to bring that to your attention because, like I said, there are good ones who are willing to take down the bad ones. And it doesn't matter to me whether, I don't give a crap if they're the head of the SIS or the now compromised GCSB because of the CCP infiltration through the government. And they are, of course. So what do you have to say about that?
It's very, very simple. I don't look at anything else but the fact that there is good and there is evil.
Exactly, right or wrong.
It's right or wrong, that's right. In all our branches of society, there's good and evil. Our politicians, not all our politicians are bad, but our government looks like shit
The
right now.
The system is corrupt as. It's self-preservation
in
and
everything.
It's there
in church, in our churches, in our maraes, in our cultures.
Yep.
Everywhere there's good and bad, and we're all born with a choice at the end of the day. If you want to associate with something you believe in to be good, and you find out that there are people involved that are bad, like you doing something about it. You heard people out there online absolutely just rubbishing Freemasonry.
Because they don't even understand it. I mean, like the DMLA, like I said, is a youth
all it
mentoring
takes is to
program. It's
meet
not
one.
even a craft.
I've never ever met a Freemason until I met you, and as soon as we met in person,
Probably did,
that
they
was
just
the
didn't tell you.
first thing.
Yeah.
That was the first thing you told me, and I admit it.
Yeah.
My heart went, oh, okay, hang on.
Is that because I'm my white supremacy or what?
Mate, you're probably blacker than me. I'll tell you.
Well, I did belong to the
honestly.
Caramello Club, I must admit.
But that doesn't matter. My whole life, I've never seen colour. I've never seen race. It's what's between your ears and what's in your heart that I see. There's not a drop of racism in me. I love all people because at the end of the day, we're just one race. That's the human race.
That's exactly right.
That's it. I don't see race. I've never seen race.
It's like your detractors, yeah? It's like your online detractors. The ones, I mean, here you're trying to save the innocence of young children, and these people are trying to take you down. I think they need to be looked at.
Look, I love them anyway because, in a way, they've helped to get my message out there. What I have noticed is when I started thanking them for the videos they were making of me, because they were really good videos.
Some of them are humorous.
So I was like, thank you so much, keep up the good work. They don't put any more videos out of me anymore. I'm like, oh, come on, guys, that's not how team
Come on,
works.
be honest. The only thing between there is one brain cell that the ears play ping pong with.
When you find your purpose, and my purpose is fighting for the abuse of children and trafficking and sexual exploitation of children to stop.
Yep.
There is nothing that is going to deter me from achieving that, to bring in awareness to our country. And I've had many, many people mock me throughout this journey, and I just don't care. I honestly don't care, because for every time I get out on the street with my Save Our Children sign, if I can save one child or I can help instill courage into a victim or survivor to step forward and know that they're not alone anymore, I'm here, even if it's just me, but I know there's not. I'm willing to risk it all and whatever it takes.
And people,
call me what you want.
On the screen, we've got going down the bottom there. You'll be able to get hold of Carlene. You've got a number there. So anyone, look, we know there's people out there now who have suffered. We know there's people who have not come forward. Come forward. Name them. Let's take them all down. And I guarantee we won't have half of the public service left. Seriously. I think it's that endemic that we won't have half of the politicians or public service left. Or probably police to investigate them.
You know, when we started this Royal Commission hearing, 2019, there was around about between 115,000 to 253 children who've been through state care.
That's right.
That have
and
been abused,
care.
and faith-based care that have been abused. Recently, the latest report has now stated that we're looking at about 655,000 victims. Children. These are children,
right.
not adults. So you're going from 0 to 16 years old, right? 655,000 victims.
That's just here.
And we're worrying about a pandemic that apparently killed 24 people, 27 people.
Most with comorbidities. We know everyone knows it's a scam by now. If you don't, you're a loser.
But the point to that is this pandemic of child abuse has been going on for years. And it's still going on. And it's because of the people who run our country are involved in the cover-up, because some of them are involved.
Exactly. And we're going to get onto that clip shortly. That'll punctuate the point from an Australian Senate hearing where the guy's he said, you've got names of politicians here, former prime ministers, and the cover-up is huge. Here as well, we have the same thing. Now, the cost, the financials, the victims get 2/10 of nothing, pretty much, right?
Yep.
A paltry sum for their lives.
Yep.
And they've got the audacity to run people who have joined gangs because it's the only family they had. Because their lives are ripped apart. Yeah. Others who have mental disorders because no one was there to sort of bring them out of that darkness.
Yep.
So they're still carrying it with them. Others who have committed suicide. The suicide rate, I think, would have been huge. I mean, people have died 30, 40 years old and they said they've died from natural causes. That you die because your soul is broken.
And even that is it is a form of murder, what they call murder by proxy. When you have a third party who contributes to the mental deterioration of a person where they end up committing suicide, it is by definition murder by proxy.
Correct.
So if you look at all the suicides of the people that were abused in state care and they weren't helped coming out of that with their trauma, with the experience they had, with no one getting held accountable, they got to a point where their only choice was they didn't want to live here anymore. They didn't want to exist anymore, so they ended their life. That life that they lived was handed to them by the people who were supposed to be taking care of us. Talking about our government, talking about our politicians, talking about our police, talking about our social welfare workers, we're talking about ACC workers, talking about all of them. They have failed our babies, they've failed our children, and they have failed our families.
Or did they really fail, or is it deliberate?
They failed the families, they didn't fail themselves, because you can't make money off well-together, put-together families. You can't make money off healthy people.
You can't traffic kids as easy.
You can't traffic kids. And even though some people might have the stigma that trafficking children is only sexual, no, it's not. There are all forms of trafficking. And as far as I'm concerned, being in this fight and going through all the evidence and all these documents that we can provide for you all to look at, they're all at your fingertips. If you pass one child from one state system to another state system, or one state home to another state home, or whatever care you put them into, that group or that foundation or that organization requires funding, right? So there is an element of money involved. So when you pass one child from one service to another and the services make money, that is a form of child exploitation and child trafficking.
Exactly what it is. Because remember, the Children Young Persons Service was so wrought with the with accusations of foster care abuse and all that sort of stuff, because they were just farming them through. Sometimes up to 8 places some of these people were abused in. And they talk about the costs, you know, to provide care and protection services for children as young. This is 2008, 2009. Young people was estimated at 451 million. For what? For what? Who benefits from this? There's another one here. For between 1950 and 2019, of between 96 billion and 217 billion. And the financial cost to the New Zealand economy, 20.8 to 46.7 billion. And the non-financial costs, I don't know how they quantify non-financial costs if we're not talking money, between 77 and 172 billion.
Right, so you've got between 253 and 655,000 victims of child abuse in state care. Divvy that up, that $217 billion up. It works out to about $853,000 per child.
Which, of course, they don't get.
Of course not.
Your inquiry heads, all your bloody lawyers, and all these other department heads and advisors and consultants, they're lapping up the money.
Psychiatrists, psychologists.
Creating jobs for themselves.
They didn't help. All they done was created broken families and broken people.
And some of the people involved in this inquiry are part and parcel of the same people who are part of that abuse. So how do you think that's going to go?
I mean, this is the country we're coming to understand. $217 billion on the abuse of children in state care. And now
They've
we've
cut it
got
off at 2019.
homeless people. The homelessness is through the roof. We've been through this country
That's
twice
been kind,
now.
remember? It's been kind.
Twice now, and Rotorua's motels are full. Levin's motels are full. Up north by us, all our motels are full. And they're just giving money out everywhere else but where it really matters. And now looking at these figures where they've gone and spent $217 billion on ruining people's lives, getting paid for it, sitting back, and no one's been held accountable for these crimes.
And you can get that those figures, if anyone wants to look, is the Martin Jenkins Economic Cost of Abuse in Care Final Report, Scoping of Approach and High Level Estimate, 29th of September 2020.
Or you can go on abuseinstatecare.org.nz, where you can find all that information. You can also read all the testimonies of the survivors that have given testimony so far. When they do have the hearings, they also live stream it on that website. We've still got 2 more days of inquiry into the abuse in state care boys and girls homes happening this upcoming week, and then they take a break until June where we get to hear testimonies from our Lake Alice
And this
crew.
inquiry is 3.5 years. Apparently they've been given unprecedented power to lift up any rock, to go into delve into anything, but I guarantee, like normal, they'll get to one, they'll see a detour sign and off they'll go instead of kicking that thing over.
And also with a budget of $56 million, and they've run out. How's that?
Yeah, of course.
For 4 people to sit on a council and listen to testimony.
Jobs for the boys. Stuff you children. That's their attitude.
This is where your taxpayer dollar is going. But they're distracting you with all these other things.
Yep.
And it's really important that people realise what is actually going on in the background of all these little red, what do they call them, psyops and red flags.
Oh, for sure.
This Royal Commission hearing has been happening for 2 years now, and you don't see a damn thing about it on our mainstream media.
Has their playbook. We know everything these cretins are up to. So, what we're going to do now, just to impress on you all, what we're actually up against. Have a look at what happened to a commission of inquiry in Australia, and one man's commentary on that. Check this out.
We should include in the terms of reference the institution of the law. And I have documents here which the Royal Commission has seen to justify that case, and in fact every Attorney General, from Attorney General Ruddock till now, has seen some of these documents, and they are police documents, and they are very disturbing. So, having produced a set of documents to the Royal Commission under an order to produce, which includes, disturbingly, documents that name in one document 28 people as alleged pedophiles, signed off by Gary Crook QC, counsel assisting an earlier Royal Commission, includes a whole lot of prominent people, and I think to protect the discretion of the Royal Commission, I won't comment on what the Commission thought, except that they thought it was outside the terms of reference of the Royal Commission. We have in Australia, sadly, a compromise at the highest of levels. There's a former Prime Minister on this list, and it is a police document.
And that's the type of thing we are up against here. You're back with Counterspin. The onus is on every single one of you watching this. Do not take the spotlight off them. Do not let them cover up anymore. Do not let them sweep it under the carpet. Do not take your foot off the gas. Every time you see them doing something that looks like they're trying to pull a Swiftie, hammer it home, highlight it. Hold every single one of these people accountable. Because believe me, they're only scratching the surface. This thing is going to be huge. That's real people when they speak out.
One of the things that I wanted to also just make everybody aware of, these inquiries are open to the public and they're held at 414 Khyber Pass and the corner of Kingdon Road, I think is the address. And it is open to the public. They do have certain testimony that they do close off, but other than that, it's open. Now, what's happening in these inquiries, the general public who are there to bear witness themselves to these testimonies and to these hearings, in these audiences we have psychiatrists, psychologists and social workers sitting there to kind of offer support to people in the audience if they feel like something's happening to them mentally or emotionally, to kind of help them process what they've just had to hear. And that's just for the general audience. But these survivors and victims that are getting up on these stands and giving testimony to what happened to them, they're reliving that pain and that trauma, re-traumatizing themselves to help all of us make sure this doesn't happen to our kids anymore. There is no aftercare for them. There is no follow-up once they walk out of that inquiry and return home to their life thinking, man, I feel like I'm finally got to say something. But when you relive some kind of trauma, there's still a little bit that affects you, right? And having support there is really important. But again, they're getting let down by all of us, really. Yeah. All of us are letting them down. If we're not saying anything or doing anything or offering help, we're just as bad as these inquiries and these royal commissions. Yeah. And it's, I don't want to be a part of that. New Zealand's got a history of failure for children. But you look at Senator Heffernan speech, it's the same in Australia. Yeah, everywhere. And I'm not going to go too much into that because I haven't really delved into Australia. I'm trying to help our own babies here.
Yeah, we need to focus on home for sure.
We do have someone in our country who's been living here for the last 3 years, who is a specialist in child abuse in state and faith-based care in Australia, and that is our cousin, Karen Brewer.
Yeah, actually, Karen Brewer does, speaking of her, Karen Brewer does some actually amazing work. She's out there hitting the pavement. She's making everyone aware. She has a fixation on Freemason Demolay. So what I want to do, Karen, is I want to invite you on the show. In fact, work with me. Help me to rid our craft of all these cretins. I want people who know Freemasons, who have been victims of any Freemason, any sort of satanic abuse, any sort of ritualistic abuse, any sort of abuse whatsoever. Give me the name and give me the lodge, and we will go after them and we will rip them out. You see, they're a disease. We're the cure, and we're coming for them. And we ain't this sort of serum cure that they're trying to get into you for this pandemic. That will kill you. True story.
No, it is a true story, mate. But I hope Karen accepts your invitation.
I'd like you to, for sure.
Because I think that together, all of us that are coming together who are really standing up for this, yourself, myself, I know you began a project called Operation Dark Place, yep. Which you can find on Facebook as well, which I'm a part of as well. So we've been working together for a while to try and give people a platform, victims and survivors, a platform, say, hey, look, we're out here and we want to help do something about these atrocities. We actually really do care.
And something will actually get done.
And we're doing it. We're all doing it in our own way. I just know that this is bigger than anything we've got going on in our country right now. It's humongous. 655,000 victims, and that's only reported ones.
It'll be a lot bigger, and still happening now. Mm-hmm. So if any of you out there, I don't care how high this goes. I don't care what level department, what agency of the government. If you have information, facts, and evidence, and you're too scared to blow it yourself, give it to me. I will lay waste to these creatures. Give it to Carlene. You can see the number scrolling on the screen. Take it down. Make the call. If you're worried about being tapped into by people, because that does happen, believe me, then create a Wicker account. Send to OpDarkPlace, OpDarkPlace, OpDarkPlace. They can't get into that one. The police tried to say that they did that. Wicker then sued them. All of a sudden, they lied. So, so Wicker, to this point, is still pretty safe to let us know what's going on. And we will... And if you get a chance, have a look at things like the Justin Davis files online. Have a read of that. One man's information, inside info. I can't personally testify to the authenticity of all of it, but I can tell you now there's a lot of it that is certainly ringing true. Have a look at some of the things one person faces when he decides to come out.
Yeah, and that's easy to find. All you do is just go on Google or DuckDuckGo and just type Justin Davies files. It's still there.
Yeah.
So, see, for what the censorship, right? When we really touch on something that's really, really like heavy, all right, we start getting shut down. But people have found a way to keep this file alive, and it's really important because the information in there
huge
is absolutely humongous.
There's a certain politician who's lawyered up to try to suppress child trafficking pedophile rings operating out of his parliamentary office. Just saying. If people want to look online for that, you know, might find a few things that might lead other places. Just saying. So there we go. Everyone, it's on us all. Let's take these creatures down together. Upcoming shows, we'll be having a follow-up shortly with Liz Lambert on the allodial title. We know we've got a lot of questions coming from that, so we want to simplify the whole thing. And this is your pushback. You are the crest of the human tsunami that we are building to reclaim this country. You're not alone. The media will tell you that you're isolated groups. You're not. You are the majority. They are the minority. Remember that. Our website, again, will soon be online. You'll be able to sign up, and when you do, you'll get a free take down the CCP ringtone. I was looking at the wrong camera. I do that sometimes. My little rants, and away I go. So we'll also be having shows on the debt-based monetary system, how our debt is impossible to repay. That's why we're forfeiting our real wealth. That's why the farmers are getting attacked. The Great Reset's bad news for us all. It's all about no more private property rights, putting you in little pens, and of course you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. Did I mention 1080 poison? We're definitely going to have a show on that because that is a big subject. And rigged elections. The ballots are due to be destroyed shortly. Someone put an injunction in. We're trying to work it on now. Find somewhere in the South Island especially. Canvass the people. All you've got to get is enough affidavits to say you voted for this particular person, and if it does not match what they gave on election night, you are set to do an injunction. That should be enough to stop the destruction of those ballots, because trust me, there is something that stinks in Denmark, and it ain't the damn fish. Anyway, my rant's over. My nigris. I had to say it. Okay, so
I'm not offended. I'm absolutely not offended.
That's right. I mean, we just laugh at today. These people who try to make it bigger than it is.
People are just getting so sensitive these days because there's so much out there, so much going on.
Yep.
But people just stay focused
on what matters.
On what really matters. Our children. Without our children, your bloodline dies, your legacy dies. There'll be no one here to take over this place when we're all gone and we're all gotten rid of. So our children should be everyone's number one priority. And I just ask you, please, if you can, like Calvin said, very easy to get a hold of, and just please find the courage to reach out. Or if you know someone that is going through this, support them, stand by them, because they need support as much as
your job to prove you are the shield to the innocent.
That's right.
Stand now. That's good. We will be following the story with the Royal Commission and different shows as we go along, because we're not going to take the spotlight off this. We have to see this thing through to the end. So I'm going to now end the show, which is going to be sad because it's great talking to you. We're going to end the show with my favourite song. I don't give a stuff if it annoys you. I love it because it's happening. These people have got to be taken down. Okay, so here we go. Let's hear it.
他们的恐惧是我们的武器， 我们的胜利。谢谢了，兄弟姐妹们，你们健身了吗？行动，行动，行动！中共，你完了 ！Take down the CCP！
Just beginning, but the games you want to play. Bring it on and I will fight to the end. Just watch and see. It's all started, everything's begun, and you are over. Cause we're taking down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. Let's take down the CCP. Let the bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. 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 Let the bullets fly a little longer.
干灭中国共产党这个 CCP， 还能让我们远离恐惧。Take down the CCP.
They try to scare the nation with fabrication, but we see through the lies. We won't fall, we will fight you back. Police corruption with crooked assumption. They ran our lives, but no more. We will win, we will take down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. Let's take down the CCP. Let the bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
站起来吧！
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
站起来吧！
Let the bullets fly a little
为
longer.
奴役的人们
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
行动！
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
行动！
Let the bullets fly a little
你
longer.
完了
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
！Take down
Let
the
the bullets fly a
CCP.
little longer. Bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down the evil CCP.